There we go. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Plays and Fades YouTube channel after the weigh-ins with an absolute banger card coming at you guys tomorrow. UFC 268 from Madison Square Garden. What is going on, my man?
Not too much, buddy. I'm excited to be back again and been having a lot of good success with you breaking down these cards. So after it, once again, we get two numbered events in a row. A luxury for us. We're here breaking it down when it's freaking Mackenzie Dern and Marina Rodriguez in the main event. So now we get, real title fights and really high stakes matchups from the prelims to the main card. So I'm excited about this fight card. We get a couple snoozers in there, a couple of stinkers as well. But, broadly speaking, I think this is a pretty high quality card.
I hope you're not talking about my boy Chris Barnett being a stinker, man. He is an absolute legend.
Oh, dude, it's not just him, unfortunately. There's more, but we'll get into it as we go.
I'm excited to hear your takes on them. Once again, welcome back, everybody, to the channel. Make sure you guys are checking out the DFS video after, because there's a lot of DFS too. And I know you tackled it last weekend. Have you had the chance to look at any DFS this week at all?
Nope, but I'll pull up DraftKings right now and see if we can pull something together.
Well, just as you were able to bring some DFS knowledge to me last week, I went out there, used code Liam in Prize Picks, and I was out there and I've looked at a couple lines as well, so I'll look over those with you. But let's not waste any more time. Let's get right into it. We have a beautiful 14-card slate. I am hyped. And I know you said there's some snoozer, but I'll tell you for a fact, this first fight will not be a snoozer. You have CJ Vergara 9-2-1 with Ode Osborne 9-4. I'm going to keep this one short and sweet. Ode Osborne's a killer. Man hasn't come out of the first round in 8 of his last 9 fights. I'm not high on CJ Vergara. I think that he fought in the Contender Series before I did videos with you, because I know I faded Vergara and it bit me in the ass, but that's okay. I'm on Ode Osborne here. I think he finishes this fight, and I think he's better in a lot of places, but I'm excited to see where your thoughts are on this one, because I do not have a bet locked in. But I'll tell you for a fact, I'm really high on Ode Osborne on DraftKings, because I do think he finishes this. What are your thoughts on this fight?
I think that that's a very live possibility. I'm not married to a money line on this fight. I think that Ode, I still have a couple questions about him at the weight class. I feel like being that tall, long, lanky, thin could affect his durability a little bit. And so that's something I'm interested to see play out. I think that early in the fight, he's going to be winning the exchanges. I think he's got the length that will make a difference. And I think he's got pretty decent intercepting tools. I don't think Vergara is very clever about his entries. But that being said, he's pretty persistent. He's a pretty tough guy. I think that if he doesn't get finished early, Ode doesn't really have a lengthy track record outside of the first round, like you mentioned. But for good and for ill, he wins and loses in the first round oftentimes. And so something I thought was an interesting look for the fight, and, a bet that I did lock in was the fight to end by KO at plus 140. And I think that that covers a lot of viable outcomes here. I think somebody's probably going to get slept in the first round. But on top of that, I do think that Vergara's path in this fight is to wade through some damage, tough it out, and eventually find a finish, and wear on Ode and keep landing shots. And he has proven that he can get second, third round TKOs. So for that reason, I didn't want to invest in either one of these fighters. I considered a poke on the Ode by KO line. It was pretty wide. But ultimately this is a lighter weight fight. And I think both guys have a viable path to finish. So instead of backing either guy, I'm going to take the plus 140 on the fight to end by KO. And I think that the fight to end inside the distance, what is that lined at?
Not as good as I wanted.
Minus 175, right? So they're saying it's minus 175 that the fight doesn't go to the decision, but they're also saying that you can get, the fight to end by KO at plus 140. I do think that there's some possibility of an Osborne submission here, but I think it's much more likely that this fight plays out and ends on the feet. Hello, Mbe.
What's going on? We got a few people in the chat. Thank you guys for ratting with us today. Carter, my boy. Let's go indeed. I know you got I know you're riding with me. I saw your DM, man. There's some money to be made. I'm telling you for sure. But yeah, I'm with you. I do love your KO, and I do think this fight finishes again, like it seems to be a trend on the show. I like mine inside the distance because I do think Osborne does have the ground victory. I don't think a submission's out of the realm of possibilities. I think that if it's Harry, he probably goes there because I do think he has the advantage. But it's one of those spots where I agree. I think it's probably going to end up on the feet more likely than not. And I do think that Osborne is going to be that better striker. I think he's a smarter fighter. It's just, you're right. He's a big guy for the division. He does get chin checked. So if Vergara comes out here and starts him, I would not be surprised. But I do think that overall the better fighter is Osborne on the feet, on the ground. And I'm going to take him here. Like I said,
think if you're playing multiple entries on DraftKings, this is a fight you probably want ownership on both sides to find an optimal lineup, I would think, because I think both guys have potential to end it early and score really high. And Vergara is the cheaper option for sure. But Osborne, he's not priced as high as some of the other favorites on the card here. And he does have, a viable path to a finish as well. So that's something that's interesting to me from a DraftKings perspective. Didn't mean to cut you off.
No worries. We mentioned the same thing in my DFS video. I really like Osborne up top. Actually, Kiro called him Ozzy Osbourne a few times to the point where I kept on calling him Ozzy Osbourne. I don't know what's going on with me, but yeah, Osborne, I think he has a lot of paths of victories. And the only reason I do not have a locked-in bet on him to finish the fight at plus 130, I was looking at him to finish at that line, is just because I have so much of him on DraftKings. If he goes out there and, like you said, gets popped, because we know he's been popped before, I lose enough money on DraftKings that I don't really know if I want my money on it. If I am looking for a parlay piece come fight night, I do think the fight doesn't go to decision is a great look at minus 170. It's just a bit too steep for my liking. And there's a lot of other spots I like, but I do think Ody Osborne goes out there, gets a win, hopefully KO for you, but I would not be surprised if it's a submission too. All right, moving right along. This one's a good one. And before I try to say anything, I'm going to butcher this name. Warning you guys all this right now. You want to give it a shot before I do it, or do you think you're going to let me just call him Melsic?
Melsic Bagdasarian.
Oh, there you go. Melsic Bagdasarian facing Bruno Silva. Melsic is 6-1. Bruno Souza is 10-1. Bagdasarian is supposed to face TJ Laramie, my Canadian fella. That fight fell through. We have Souza coming in here at short notice. Melsic is a incredibly powerful stand-up artist. We saw him fight a few months ago, and before that fight, we hadn't seen any tape on him. He never exits the first round. I think his last 4 fights were under a minute combined of fight time. But this guy's a killer. He's got some insane crisp hands and striking and kickboxing. The man is powerful. And he's a guy, Bruno Souza, who is probably the better matchup for Melsic. I mean, if I was going to if the TJ Laramie fight did not fall through, I probably would have had a bet at TJ Laramie just because of that ground game. We haven't really seen Melsic texted too much, but it looks like Sosa's going to keep it on the feet. If I'm not wrong, he's karate based. I'm pretty sure. He's also a striker, and
he's a Lyoto Machida product.
Yes, yeah. So it's probably going to be the optimal fight for Melsic. Melsic is young, powerful, and I think this is a Melsic spot to win because he's going to have that game plan that he wants. But I don't have enough tape. I don't have enough footage on Melsic to have a confident bet. What about you?
Yeah, I think that I'm viewing this as a little bit of a risky bet, so I'm limiting my sizing here, but I definitely consider to play on Bagdasarian inside the distance in the spot. I feel like if he's going to win, it's going to be inside the distance. The KO line is 15 cents more. It's like plus 165 versus the inside the distance at plus 150. Sharpest books are holding the inside the distance at plus 115. And so he's a significant favorite here. He is expected to finish. This is a big step up in competition for Souza. He's kind of the guy who will sneak out a split decision, limit the engagements, try and touch you a little bit more, stands in that upright posture, a lot of movement. I think that Melsic is probably going to be able to track him down and hurt him really bad. And I think that, it's most likely he's just going to knock him out here. But it's MMA and crazy stuff happens. And so why risk it for, an extra 15 cents of value? It didn't really make sense to me from a risk perspective. So, I'm going to end up here with some money on Melsik to win the fight inside the distance. I'm not going to go crazy. I didn't want to touch his money line at the minus 300 tag, but I do think this is a good matchup for him. I think that Melsik is a pretty scary guy, especially if he's not going to be faced with a significant grappling threat. And so if we get a committed grappling threat across the cage from him that can match some of that physicality, that has really good pace and cardio, now you might be interesting me in a Melsik fade, but not with this matchup. I don't like it. A striker against a striker here. I prefer Melsik. I think his power is going to make the difference. I don't like the upright posture of his opponent and the lack of head movement here. And I think Melsik looks like a kind of guy who'd be pretty tough and durable. So while we haven't seen him face a tremendous amount of adversity, I do think that he's going to be the more durable guy in the matchup. So I'm going to take Melsik here. His only loss is by submission. It was a while ago. Souza's not much of a finisher. 3 of his wins inside the distance, and 1 win by disqualification. Bunch of split decisions. The guy, he finds a way to win close fights. I'll give him that credit. But, odds makers don't expect this to be a close fight. And if it's not a close fight, that means Melsik's probably whipping his ass.
Hey, I agree. And whereas I did say that I don't want to have a bet on it, it's not going to have any Melsik in DraftKings. I mean, he has a lot of finishing potential. I'll probably be staying away from Souza because I don't see his only path to victory for me is winning minutes, which I don't think he does. I don't see him finishing Melsik. And so I think that Melsik has the opportunity to score high, but when you have a slate like this with him being the same price tag as an Usman, as a bunch of people up top, I'm not liking him as much as others, but I will have some of him. I do think his potential is really high. He's at a really high ceiling because we saw how quickly he can dispose of people. And you're right, it is a big step up, but I have not had that bet at all. I'm very limited in bets I have locked in, if I'm being honest, but I am siding with the Melsik KO as well.
From a DraftKings perspective, I don't like Melsik as much, given the price. I do think he's most likely to win this fight inside the distance, but I think on a fight card with a bunch of fighters, 9,200 on Melsik, I feel like is going to be a little tough. Although with that being said, his propensity to finish in the first round can score really high, so got to keep that in mind. Maybe if you're playing multiple entries, you have him in one, but I don't think he would be, a core play for me by any means.
Fair, I completely agree. And speaking of expensive price tags, the most expensive player on the slate this week is Dustin Jacoby. Dustin Jacoby's price tag of 9.6K on DraftKings is 15-5-1, facing John Alon, 13-6. This is going to be a light heavyweight bout. And Liam, man, I hate Dustin Jacoby. I'm not a fan of him. I bet against him way too much. He's lost me money. Oh well. I did bet on him to beat was it Ledette? I'm pretty sure the guy he beat with leg kicks. But other than that, I bet on Ian Cutelaba, and I probably will keep betting against him. I think this line's too wide. I have no money on this because I do think he is the better striker, and he's not as good as I would hope Allen would be, because I know that Dustin Jacoby on the mat is not what you want to see from an MMA fighter. I really want to fade him, man. I really do. I won't have any Jacoby in DraftKings, and I really want to fade him. The more the line creeps up, I kind of want to place like a half unit or something on it. I don't know. I know it's probably crazy, but I just don't like his ground game. It's so easy to expose him there, and where Ian Cutelaba isn't able to, one day he'll face a good enough grappler. What are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, man, I think that this is an interesting fight. It kind of stunned me that you said that in terms of his price on DraftKings. And, it makes sense given I think he's the biggest favorite on the card as well from a money line perspective. But I think that has more to do with this being an evenly lined fight card than it has to do with Dustin Jacoby being like this massive favorite. I think, man, I'm a little surprised at that price tag for DraftKings. I would not touch that at all. I don't think his finishing potential is high enough to justify that. I could definitely see him cruising to like a leg kick split decision, or excuse me, a leg kick and jab based unanimous decision. I think he is a good striker, broadly speaking. But I also think that he's a little bit hittable. I think that his durability has held up really well, but I also think it's bound for that to go at some point. I do think it was painful not cashing that Kutalaba round one bet. He did show some really good durability and fight instincts there because Kutalaba hit him with the kitchen sink and basically drained the tank trying to kill the guy in round one. And had very little left to offer the rest of the way. So ends up going down as a draw. And I think that Jacoby, to his credit there, right, he took an absolute shit kicking and then came back to, win the fight and win minutes again. So I think that overall, Jacoby is most likely to win this fight by decision. He's most likely to gut out at least 2 of these rounds, even if he starts to tire, even if he's not feeling himself. But I do think, I could see your path with Alon. I could see Alon keeping this close. He's pretty durable guy, hasn't really been finished with strikes, has lost some decisions, tends to get out grappled in losses. And so I think, this could be an interesting spot for Alon, but I do think that Jacoby's a pretty big guy. He's kind of hard to control. Kutalaba is a real strength-based physical guy, not a ton of technique behind what he's doing. He has some, but it's a lot of muscling you around, and I feel like that drained both of them completely. Whereas I do think that, broadly speaking, Jacoby's got a pretty energy-efficient style to his striking game. So if this turns into a range kickboxing match, I think Jacoby's probably going to win it close a lot of the time.
Yeah, I have to agree. And whereas maybe I'm reaching a bit, I was looking at everything, and you have a guy, Jacoby, who 5 losses, 3 of them by finish. Despite them being a long time ago, they are still losses. And Alon to win inside the distance is plus 850. I don't know. Maybe I sprinkle something on that, because I think that if Jacoby does lose this, it's because Alon was out there and imposes a wrestle-based approach. And whereas he was able to survive in Kutalaba, you never know. I don't know. Maybe I'm just hating on the guy too much. But like you said, the biggest problem with this fight is on DraftKings, you have a guy in Jacoby up here, and you expect Alon to be down here. But because of the short notice replacement, he's too expensive for my liking as well. He should be 6.6K, but because it was a short notice replacement, he's sitting at like 7.7K. Going to be a fade fight for me. Maybe I'll have a Hail Mary with a plus 850 ticket on Alon. You never know. This is a fight where I'm not really looking forward to as much as others. There's a bunch of bangers, and this is not one of them. So I move right along. I completely see your thoughts. If anyone is here from the DFS Whisperer Discord, shout out to that. They were all talking about how it should go to a decision. I could probably see that as well. It's probably going to go over, but this is not a fight I really want my money on. Never been a fan of Jacoby's style, and we're going to stay away from that. But moving right along. But before we do, shout out to the guys in the chat. Frank Newman, welcome back as always. Matthew McLeish, my boy. Good Gordo Gambles video. This is the Plays and Fade Sports channel. All right, no, I'm kidding. Liam, brother, thank you as always for coming on. It's going to be sad not having you for Dana White Contender Series, by the way. I was just thinking about that, man. That's such a good way to spend my Tuesday. Anyways, the People's Main Event. This one, I'm excited to hear your thoughts on this one. Gian Vellante, 17-3 versus Chris Barnett, 21-7. Gian Vellante, retirement fight. He is a light heavyweight. He used to fight at 205. He weighed in this morning at 260 pounds. 260. And he's facing a guy in Chris Barnett who is a 5'9 heavyweight. All right. That's out of the way. Okay. First of all, I had to show, when I was doing my tape study, I called my roommates in the video. I'm like, just watch this Chris Barnett guy. He's just so funny, right? Good. He's just an energetic dude. He can fly all over the place. I faded Vellante a lot in the past. I do not want to bet this fight because it'll be sloppy, but I'm edging on the Barnett side. What are your thoughts on this one?
So full disclosure, right? I have 2 small bets right now on Gian Vellante. Both are longer shot parlays. Granted, I locked in Vellante as a plus 115 dog. The market has moved in my favor there. He's about a minus 130, minus 120 favorite across the market. And I think that that's just because he's a better fighter than Chris Barnett.
100%.
That being said, John Vellante, I was hoping and expecting that he might show up weighing, 240, maybe 250, to show up weighing 260 pounds, and to announce your retirement before the fight are both really bad signs for me, to back him at chalk at this point. That being said, Barnett, is just very unimpressive to me. I do think that he's got a path, but the problem is his cardio is poor. His durability is not great. And he kind of looks for a way out at times when the fight's going poorly, which, you can say the same about Vellante, but you could also say that he does it later in the fight. He'll wait till that 12 and a half, 13-minute mark when he's just huffing and puffing. And especially at the heavyweight class, it's really hard to see Vellante having more than 12 minutes of go here. But I also see Barnett, really tapering off in the cardio department as well. And so if I'm expecting a low stamina kickboxing match, I would still take Vellante at this point. And, I just think that a lot of the dynamism and explosivity that we see that people know and love Barnett for is like a 3 to 5 minute proposition. And I do think after that point, he's going to be the way smaller guy, just trying to do the basics and getting out basicked by Vellante, who, for all his other faults, will still have some power, will still have basic core competency as a kickboxer, just from all the years of training and competing. I think this is his 17th fight in the organization. So, yeah, he lost to, the guy who ate Jake Collier, and he lost to the artist formerly known as Jake Collier, and he got submitted by Maurice Green in a fight he was winning. But outside of that, Maurice Green, I know that he wasn't like a high-level UFC guy, but he competed in some UFC fights. He kept some of them close and whatever. Barnett, that loss to Rothwell was really uninspiring to me. I feel like Rothwell is not long for the sport and the division, and it was a pretty easy win for Ben. And I know that Ben's probably levels above him in the submission game, but it was sort of just like a, hey, Ben, let's get out of here type of deal. So I would not be stunned to see that here if Barnett is not able to make something happen in the first 7 minutes. But, how could you trust Vellante at chalk? Showing up how he showed up for the fight, announcing his retirement. I locked in those bets well in advance, but I'm going to be rooting for Vellante. This is also in New York, hometown guy. Even if he gets a bogus, biased split decision, I'm with that. I support it. I endorse it because I got $8 to win $608. And John Vellante is a part of that, unfortunately. So we already cashed on the first 8 legs. Let's get these last 4 across the way. And John Vellante is first up for me.
Well, I got 2 things. First of all, I like my entertainment, and Chris Barnett makes me laugh. He's just a meme, right? Second of all, I have to ask you, what was with that green submission? If anyone doesn't know, Liam is going to be my BJJ guy from now on, absolute stud there. But was that submission something to like worry about? I was watching tape and I was still confused at what happened. Was that a red flag or anything? Because it looked like nothing, but it looks like there may be something behind that Maurice Green submission.
I think that it's just a function of Maurice Green's weird body and John Vellante being really tired and just panicking. Most people, I don't know, if you haven't been in subs, they don't always get you because they have it locked on perfectly. Sometimes they get you because they put you under a tremendous amount of pressure and you can't find the way out, and you're looking for the way out and you can't find it and you can't get them off you, and you run out of ideas and you're panicking and it's tighter and tighter and it sucks and it hurts and I'm going to tap, right? And it's not because it's a perfect hold. It's because I'm running out of options. I'm running out of ideas. I'm running out of air. and this stinks. And that's what was happening to Vellante there, because he really just, he sort of threw in the towel on a fight he was winning because he was panicked and he was really out of breath. And that is a concern for sure. And that's why I wouldn't back him at chalk. But it's not that the hold had nothing to it. It was like the basis for a correct hold. But normally somebody would do anything to defend it because you don't have the body position to finish. And John did not do anything to defend it. He just ended up submitting to the hold. So I think that would be the difference there. It's not like it was a nothing burger. It's not like he threw the fight and it was fixed. He just was in a little bit of an uncomfortable spot. Didn't know the answer immediately on how to get out and didn't want to take the time to figure it out. Had enough and tapped. And probably regretted it right after, honestly.
Well, this is a fight I'm going to stay away from. I don't blame you at all for having the shot on Vellante because Barnett is more of a meme than he is a good fighter. But I'm excited to see how it pays out. Let's not waste any more time on that. I think on DraftKings it'll be really sloppy. I don't want either side of it. Cam, I know, man, you've been all over Covington all week. We'll get to that one later. I got a couple hot takes on that one, but Usman, man, that press conference was pretty wild. It's good old beef days. We haven't seen those a lot in COVID time, but it was pretty entertaining. But hey, I'm excited to talk about that one later. But we got a bunch more to get through, so let's keep her going. Next fight on the card: Jordan Williams versus Ian Gary. Jordan Williams 9-5, Ian Gary 7-0, making his debut. Ian Gary, behind Jacoby, he is the second highest fighter on the DFS slate. And for very good reason, in my opinion. I'm going to kick this one to you. I'm going to keep it short and sweet. I think if you are going to get submitted by Mikey Gall, you're going to get submitted by Ian Gary. I think Ian Gary runs through him, and he is a parlay piece for my first official bet of the week. What are your thoughts on it?
No, I'll give some actual thoughts on the fight. I would tend to agree with you. I don't think he got submitted by Mickey Gall because he's like this god-awful jiu-jitsu practitioner. I think it was because he got rocked really bad. But I also don't think he's an exceptional grappler. I do think that Ian Gary has a live possibility of landing, hurting him, and locking up a submission. And so, I also have a share of Ian Gary by submission here. But with that being said, I don't think that the money line is appropriate here to be backing a debuting fighter. Williams hasn't given a lot to be confident in, but we've seen solid Cage Warriors prospects. Justin Burlinson comes to mind, that come over, have all the right tools and ingredients, and they get caught. And I just don't think that that's outside the realm of possibility here. You look at Williams, this is a guy who knocked out RoboCop. This is a guy, granted, it was at 85, a weight class I liked him at a lot better. I don't really like him at this weight. I don't like him having to cut weight. I don't think it does good things for his durability. But all that being said, does it limit his offense? Maybe. We didn't really get to see a ton of fight play out. I'd be more interested to see how he looks over an extended fight when he can get his feet wet. And maybe Gary, because he's making his UFC debut, is going to be a little bit slower to engage here, a little bit tentative. But I think that this is a fight that's aligned at the 1.5 for the over-under. I do think odds makers are expecting a finish here. So I don't really know what to make of it. I think that it's probably going to be a Gary submission. But I just don't want to get out over my skis here. I do think that Williams is a scrapper, and they're both pretty green. So I could see either one of them making, a catastrophic error here. I think that the better skills are on the Gary side. So I get why he's a favorite to -250 to -300. -400, though, it's just like, this is a UFC newcomer, a debutante. Williams has some experience in the organization. This isn't going to be his first time making the weight anymore. And Mickey Gall, say what you will, but he's kind of UFC tested at this point and has been making some improvements, making some advances, was able to eliminate other show ponies for the UFC over the years, sent Sage Northcutt packing, right? So it's like, I don't know, this guy, Mickey Gall, might just be getting better over time by making steady investments in the game. And I think that Jordan Williams, while he's not a fighter I support financially, while he's not a fighter that I'm backing personally, I think that the money line is starting to get a little bit wide on Gary for a UFC debutant, but I do think he's the side here, and I'm with you. I think he's probably going to find the sub.
Well, I just think he is the more skilled fighter. I do make fun of that Mickey Gall loss, but like you said, it's not as bad as it does sound. But I just think Ian Gary's got some good skills. Apologies for Mr. Burlinson and Dana White Contender Series. So I hope Gary does different than that. But no, I think Gary's got some real skills, and I think he brings it to Williams here. The big thing, as you mentioned, is that weight cut. I don't like him as much here either. Wasn't impressed his last time out. That's as simple as it is. I think that Gary wins his fight, and with that reason, I am parlaying him. He is a spot I like in this card. To be honest, not that many parlay spots in my opinion, especially compared to last week. Last week was parlay chalk heavy, but nope, this is my biggest play of the night. It is a parlay, 2 units on Gary, and something else we'll talk about later. But yeah, I'm with you. I think he rolls here. We'll have someone DraftKings if he does find that finish, but not as much as other fighters, which again, we'll talk about soon. All right, moving right along. Mr. Edmond Shahbazian, 11-2 versus Nasruddin Imavov, 10-3. I'm going to keep this one pretty short and sweet, but Shahbazian was one who was just fed to the wolves. Hype train in the division, minus 400 against Brunson. And now he goes in there and he goes in there in the Brunson fights and looks awful. But Shahbazian's a guy with real skills. And he's gotten grappled. He hasn't had the fight he wanted. And now he does. I think he has the fight he wants against Imavov. Imavov is a guy who's got great box combination. I'm a big fan of that, but hasn't shown me the best fight IQ. Had a nice win over Ian Heinisch a couple fights ago, which I'll take my L. I did bet on Heinisch there. This is a spot where I think it's just a step down in competition for Shahbazian. It's a spot where I don't think Imavov is anywhere as good as Brunson or Hermanson. I think that Shahbazian is the better striker, and I think he's going to go out there and he's going to live up to his price tag. I have him bet at plus 125. 1 unit shot at Edmond Shahbazian, be a little bit of line movement there. And I'm happy with my spot because I do think he has the skills to pay the bills. I think it's a stand-up affair, and I think that Shahbazian regains a little bit of hype. What's your thought on that one?
So we're going to go the other way on this one. And that's all right, man. Sometimes you can't line up on them all together. So yeah, man, I'm on the other side here. I've been betting Nasruddin Imavov for a while though, so it's not like I'm just now lining up against. I'm not just trying to be one of those guys fading Edmond every fight now, but I will say I have faded him in the last 2 fights. I will also mention, just because those were the guys that did beat him doesn't mean those are the only guys that can beat him. So we go back in time, right? I thought that it was bullshit that he won the Darren Stewart fight. That fight was a draw, in my opinion. Darren Stewart, I thought pretty clearly took a 10-8 off him. Was eligible to have a finish, in my opinion, in the 3rd round. So Darren Stewart out wrestling you and mopping you up with the ground and pound should have been a warning sign. Should have been the thing that kicks you into gear and says, we need to be grappling. We need to be wrestling. We need to be, controlling posture. We need to be not getting hit from bottom, because he absorbed a lot of damage in that fight, in a fight that he was cruising in otherwise, right? Then we cruise down the road a little bit and he starts getting these 1-minute knockouts. And so the train starts rolling and, okay, let's get him in there with these killers. Derek Brunson didn't go out there and wrestle him to death. Don't anybody have revisionist history and say that he did. Go back and watch the fight. Derek Brunson outstruck him. Derek Brunson was striking with him and was competitive. So I don't want to hear a word about how it's just a wrestling problem. Okay, it is a problem of some guys who can mix in all different layers of the game can get him off his rhythm. He's a rhythm striker. And he likes to press people. He likes to have them guessing with the footwork games. And I think he's pretty good with that. But I also think that Imavov is not going to be, blown away by that stuff. I think that he is a pretty clever kickboxer himself. I think that he has good mixed martial arts skills. He got bodied in the clinch by Phil Hawes because Phil Hawes is a man with Division I wrestling credentials and who's thick, strong as an ox, and a crazy athlete. I don't think that everybody in the division is going to bully him around in the clinch like that. He had a dirty fight in the clinch with Jordan Williams when Williams still had his durability, and they traded hammers, but Imavov was hitting him with blow after blow. And that's why we used to think that Williams had tremendous durability, right? But I think he spent a lot of it getting the shit kicked out of him by Imavov, among other people, by the way. But, I also think this is a guy Imavov who's been showing me steady improvements, right? When I saw, he's got problems in the clinch with Phil Hawes. I don't like that. I don't want to see it. Then Ian Heinisch never gets close, doesn't let him sniff a takedown, keeps him at range, picks him apart with shots from the outside. Perfect game plan for the opponent, dispatches him, and maybe send him packing from the UFC, a guy who was like a perennial UFC guy. And a lot of people were backing Heinisch in that spot, remember? So I think Imavov, he's been at various points minus 150 favorite in this fight. I do have him as part of that long shot parlay I made a while ago. I locked him in when he was minus 145 for the long shot. And so when I saw him creeping down and down and down in this money line price, I was a little surprised. I think that at a pick'em price, this is an Imavov fight for me. You got a plus 125 figure that says he wins it 45% of the time. And I get where you're coming from there for sure. I do think that this isn't like a runaway fight. But what I think is ultimately we have somebody who's got, 7.5 out of 10 cardio in Imavov, and we've got somebody who's got 4.5 out of 10 cardio in Edmond Shahbazian. I think that Imavov has shown pretty tremendous durability. He's gotten hit with nukes by the likes of Phil Hawes and stayed on the feet and kept kicking. Same thing with Williams. Hit him with some bombs, kept kicking, no problem, kept moving around, regained his composure. I think that Shahbazian could win the first round here. Certainly will be a more competitive first round. But what I think is that ultimately the pace, the pressure, the clinch game will be too much. And I don't think that Shahbazian is going to be able to get takedowns and stay on top in the spot. And I think that if you go back and watch his early fights, he bailed himself out of a lot of fights by out wrestling guys that had no wrestling background or that were not as physically strong as him. I think that Imavov's going to be a little bit bigger, a little bit longer, a little bit, going to be able to match him physically for the most part. I will say Shahbazian looks like a house in his upper body when he weighs in. He looks like, I have it in my notes as well from his previous fights. He looks like a 205er out there for sure. He is a big middleweight, but I think Imavov is a big middleweight, man. He was actually draining the shit out of Phil Hawes in that fight, in part because he was able to physically match him in the clinch. He just did not technically know how to get his back off the cage. Every time they were at space, he rocked Phil Hawes in the second and third round. And so I think that Imavov carries that power a little bit better. I think he paces himself a little bit better. And I think ultimately he's going to find a late finish or win a decision here. But I think credit and respect to you. There's a live possibility that Shahbazian head kicks him in the first round. Shahbazian is the genuine article on the feet. He is very fast. He caught Brad, with a 1-2, then a head kick, then a front side head kick. It's not like he was just catching him with a meme kick. He set up some really nice combinations there. But I think if he catches you stopping, waiting, and looking, he can really make you pay. I think that if you get him reacting and backing up, he becomes a much more manageable task. I think that Nasruddin Imavov, I like the quality of his camp. The minds that are in his camp. Cyril Gahn's going to be in his corner as well. I think these guys are cerebral fighters. I think these French fighters are a little bit underlooked right now by the market. And so I'm going to have to get in and wave the French flag for my boy. But I wish you the best of luck, my friend. I always hate to go head to head on these matchups, but we're going to have to do it this time. Edmund Shahbazian, talented guy, but he's been a profitable fade train for me. Imavov almost cashed me that underdog ticket against Phil Hawes a couple times, almost cashed me that round 3 bet against Phil Hawes. So I'm going to give him a chance here again. I think he's been making the more consistent improvement fight over fight, and that's what I'm going to back in the spot.
Fair, man. And whereas I don't like going head-to-head with you, I am still happy with my spot. I think it's one of those fights where we get to see what level really Shahbazian is, because he went from all those finishes to getting thrown to the dogs, in my opinion. And you're right. I think it's that takedown threat and that pressure that did lose him those fights. And I just don't think Imavov poses that same problem. However, I think it's really close. I just think the line isn't fair to Shahbazian. I think that Imavov's getting the step up, Shahbazian's getting the step down. Plus 125. I think it should be a pick 'em in my opinion. So I'm going to take Shahbazian. I'm going to ride with it. I'm not happy that you're against me. I'll tell you that for a fact, especially because.
Well, I think on a DraftKings perspective, Shahbazian's the obvious side here on DraftKings. But I do think that, Imavov is still sneaky because I do think that there's a lot of these guys who took over late, Hermansson played that pretty conservative game. Brunson didn't, and that's why he got him out of there. Brunson was like, no, we're not going for submissions. I'm going to beat the shit out of you. And by electing to beat the shit out of him, he was able to get him out of there broken mentally as well, in my opinion. That was part of the problem. I think that Brunson obviously punches into takedowns way better than Imavov does. So that is a different style matchup. But then you see Hermansson, right, who had literally nothing to offer him on the feet in round 1 and had to panic wrestle him from far away. And normally Hermansson does that and gets stuffed and gets finished by a power striker. That's what happened in the Cannonier fight. And I think it was Thiago Santos as well. It's like when he fights somebody who's powerful and can stuff the initial takedown attempts, that's what happens to Hermansson. And Shahbazian, was able to tune him up like an old guitar for 5 minutes, but then he just can't finish. He can't follow through. He's not able to do anything about it. And honestly, Jack was scared shitless of losing top position. So he did nothing from top position. He was very conservative until the last minute and then goes all out, right? Imavov doesn't do that. Imavov never stops working, in my opinion. He was still working in the Hawes fight in the clinch, just was stuck against the fence. I think that he's going to have consistent output and work here in this fight, and I think if he's able to do that, he's also got a pretty decent killer instinct. I'm just concerned that he could finish Shahbazian down the stretch. But for DraftKings, I think Shahbazian's going to score well in the first round, and he's the more live to finish in that very first round, in my opinion. So, yeah, definitely at the price, DraftKings perspective, you got to look Shahbazian.
Happy you say that because if anyone's checked out my DFS video, Shahbazian's one of my favorite underdogs of the week. So I do like hearing that. Check out that video, guys, after that. But yeah, speaking of Phil Hayes, he's up next, man. That was a fight where I was also on Imavov. I didn't like Imavov's fight IQ there. Maybe that's why I'm fading him again. But oh well, that's okay. Phil Haas 11-2. Chris Curtis 26-8. Chris Curtis making his UFC debut, even though he did compete on Dana White Contender Series. Phil Haas, man, he's been a killer to me and my buddies' bank accounts. I could just never get this guy right. So this is a spot where I'm completely off of this fight. I don't want any part of it because Phil Haas has burnt me enough. I just told you I bet Imavov against him. He's just not a guy who can completely get right. So with that being said, I'll let you kick this one off. What are your thoughts on this fight?
Sure, man. This is a fight where, I just can't get behind Haas at the price here. I think Haas is the obvious pre-fight side because we've seen defensive wrestling deficiencies from Chris Curtis. And Phil Haas has shown an ability and a propensity for pushing that wrestling advantage on somebody. And we've also seen that he can kind of stall out a fight using his wrestling more effectively now than early in his career. And I think that, Haas limits his engagements, lets people come to him a little bit, and then controls them. And I think that he's very live to do that in the spot here. But my problem is, I've also seen this Curtis fellow, stay active off his back a little bit, try and work back to his feet, and also he carries that power into the second and the third round as well. He's carried fights later on. He's finished them late. And so, is this going to be a big investment for me? No. Is this going to be something I back the Brinks truck up on? No. But am I going to have to touch Chris Curtis at plus 2,600 in round 3? Yeah, I am, because I've seen Phil Haas have an internal implosion before. I've seen Curtis put somebody away in the third round. And I think that Haas, he should smash him, right? That's why he's the clear money line side here. But Haas has just had pretty predictable collapses over the course of a fight before. And granted, they don't all happen in the third round, but I think if he's trying to grapple proactively for 15 minutes here, there is definitely a chance that he could gas himself. And for that reason, I think that it's possible Curtis could track him down late. Hawes always strikes me as a little bit chinny and uncomfortable on the feet. But I do think that he is just a class above as an athlete. Curtis is tiny compared to Hawes. It would not stun me to see Hawes get on top past the guard here. And if he is able to do that, he could clean him up early. But I just think that if Curtis can hang around, can hold on, can keep himself in the fight, I think he will be live come that third round. And it could start to close a little bit on the live betting market. So, maybe a live entry on Curtis if we see Hawes is starting to slow down. But otherwise, for me, not really a fight I want huge investment in. And I do think that Hawes is just better physical athlete. Now he's had some time to prepare for the matchup. I don't think he's going to get surprised by very much here. And Curtis, is a little bit older, a little bit longer in the tooth for somebody making their UFC debut. So Hawes strikes me as the more prepared, more modern game, and I think he should get the dub.
Hey, fair. And this is a spot where people are treating this line as Chris Curtis making his UFC debut, whereas this guy's had a ton of good competition. Like he's not like he's a nobody. I'm a fan of his resume. I think he's got some good fights out there, and he's got the experience. It's just I do think Hayes wins this fight, so I don't want to lay the chalk at it though. And whereas I do talk about how good Curtis's resume is, I still don't think it's worth a shot in my opinion with my bankroll, just because I've gotten Phil Hawes wrong so many times. Phil Hawes could go out there, look super ready, have that same cardio he had against Dawkins, and he could go out there and win pretty convincingly. But like I said, I'm staying away from this one. All right, moving right along. Quinta versus Bobby Green. Quinta is 14-6-1 versus Bobby Green 27-12-1. Right off the bat, this one came off to me as an over fight. Two guys, decision machines. We haven't seen Quinta in a couple of years though, so I've stayed off of it. I said it on my DFS video. Bobby Green is one of my cash options because I think he's relatively safe because it will go the whole. I think it does go the whole 3 rounds, in my opinion. And Bobby Green has a ton of output, ton of volume. But there's no official bet in my opinion. I'm going to pick Bobby Green by decision with volume and pressure. But I'm excited to hear your thoughts on this one because I have nothing locked in yet.
Whoo! Man, this is a fight for me where my initial read was Bobby Green. My initial look at the stats said everything points towards Bobby Green because it does. Al's been away for a while. Al's been focusing on other projects. But there's one nagging thing about the matchup that kept me off the Bobby Green side here, which is just that Bobby isn't really insistent about where a fight's going to take place. He kind of just lets a fight come to him. And I also think that he kind of prefers to keep a fight in boxing range, play around, shoulder roll some shots, land a couple jabs, throw a little bit on the return, talk a little smack, maybe a handful of kicks. He just doesn't really put a stamp on very much. And I think that Al, for all his faults, when he's not getting the legs kicked out from under him, he's pretty reliable to throw volume, come forward, look to set up with the jab, look to find big overhands to enter behind. And I think that this fight could play out with Al throwing, a decent bit of volume as Bobby backs up and shoulder rolls and stuff like that. And judges have misscored that before. I think that Bobby's going to come out of this fight with less damage, looking good, feeling good, but he also can optically give away fights. And he's a minus 175 favorite. The fight's really chalked to go to the decision. So not a ton that really interests me from a betting perspective, but I will just say, I think Bobby Green is the side here. I think that unless the judges screw him, Bobby's probably going to win this fight pretty clearly. He's the more efficient striker. He's got pretty good wrestling defense. Al hasn't really shown a propensity or an ability to press a wrestling advantage in recent UFC bouts. Al hasn't been very active. Bobby's had 6 UFC fights since Al last fought in the organization. And I think that we've been seeing the best product to date from Bobby Green, whereas we've seen a bit of a regression, on the other hand, from Al Quinta. And Al's fights overall have not aged particularly well. His best win is Kevin Lee, twice over. And his worst and most egregious loss is Cowboy Cerrone not that long ago. And we've seen that Cowboy really hasn't had much success against other fighters before or since. So it's like an outlier, really dominant win for him. And it just seems to me like Al's striking is a little bit behind the 8 ball, probably due to injuries and everything else. I just don't know that he can incorporate as many kicks and knees and things that you would want to see from a modern diversified striker. He just seems like he's kind of stuck in the mud with a pretty basic boxing game, pretty plodding footwork. And I think that Bobby should be dancing around him at the Garden, but I also think the fans are going to be big in support of Al. This is in New York, and New York, stand up, baby. Al Quinta's coming to steal a split decision. I do think that that's probably the best bet of the night. Is fight to go to split decision, or either one of these guys to win a split decision. I do think that's a very live possibility. Go back and look at any Bobby Green fight. Even fights that I think most of us would agree Bobby wins, he loses unanimously on the scorecards because he just showboats a little bit too much, doesn't stay focused on the task. I think what's been nice about Bobby's game recently is he's been a little bit more focused and persistent. I'd like to see more of that from Bobby. I'd like to see him a little bit more dialed in, a little bit more focused. And it'd be nice to see Bobby get a finish for once in his career. He's got somebody coming off a big layoff here, but Al's super tough and super durable. I don't think Bobby gets him out of there. I think it's probably 30-27, 29-28 type deal visually. But I think that it's very live that this is a split decision on the night.
Hey, I completely see that. This is a fight where, like I said, don't want no part of it in the betting line because I do think it's geared for that decision. I am going to pick Bobby Green to win that decision. Like I mentioned in my DFS video, cash option. I think he's a great cash option. I think that Bobby Green, knock on wood, I don't think he's getting finished. So I think that he's relatively safe. He puts out the volume, puts out the output. No matter what, he scores high, even in losses. So I think he's a relatively safe option here. But I wouldn't be surprised if, like you said, Alquinta wins that split decision. However, I do think that Green is just more active. I think he's been doing better recently. I think he looked really well against Fiziev last time out as well. So add the layoff to Alquinta. I'm going to be taking Bobby Green to win this one by decision. All right, moving right along. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 left. One fight left before the main card. And this is one. This is one where I want to talk about for a long time. Andreas Michailidis, 13-4 versus Alex Pereira, 3-1. Alex Pereira making his UFC debut, beaten Mr. Adesanya in a couple fights. This guy's a glory kickboxing king. And this one's really simple for me. Striker versus grappler. I'm not going to call him a grappler because that's not all he does. It's honestly not even what he's best at, in my opinion. But he is better on the ground than Pereira because, honestly, a lot of people in the UFC are. Pereira has no ground game, in my opinion. However, he is working on it. I think I saw somewhere that he's working with Glover in this fight camp. But it's very simple. I think this fight ends. My other parlay piece to Ian Gary is fight to not go to decision. I think that either Pereira knocks him out cold in any of those rounds, or that he gets submitted because we've seen Pereira taken down. We've seen Pereira controlled on the ground. He just doesn't have a ground game. He's a kickboxer. I don't blame him. But it's a spot where I like Pereira to win. I think he does win this fight, but I would not be surprised if there's a submission upset from Michailidis. With that being said, playing it safe. Fight doesn't go to decision. That is my line. I absolutely destroyed line movement on that. I'm very happy. I have plus money 2 units for fight doesn't go to decision and Ian Gary. It's my play of the week. I am loving that one. What are your thoughts on this one?
Wow. You said the fight doesn't go to decision at what price?
I locked it in at -170, I'm sure, as a parlay piece. So it parlay with Ian Gary, it's plus money.
Nice. I think that's a good look. Yeah, man, I do think that this is a fight that's likely to end inside the distance. I do want to just mention that I think there's not an outside or not a 0% chance that Michailidis grinds him to a decision in the fight. Michailidis, not like the world's greatest submission fighter. Possible he ends up stalling out in positions, and not trying to overextend himself, trying to make sure he keeps that cardio in the tank, because any minute on the feet with Pereira is scary business for anybody. But I do think that that's the safety valve in this fight, for your fight doesn't go to decision, is that Pereira left hook. Pereira's also got some kicks. He's got good calf kicks, but he doesn't have tremendous movement. That was something that Sean, who's a guest on my program, talked about this week. He really is in and out, forward and back, not side to side. And that means it's very easy to take them down. Somebody has to be moving side to side for you to not be able to time and prepare an angle to take them down with. And I think that constant lateral movement is what prevents, good shot takedown artists from setting anything up, whereas that's not really what you're going to see from Pereira. So I think that Pereira, at minus 250, given the step up in competition, I think it's a little bit crazy. But I also think that odds makers are just showing respect to the power, because, Pereira doesn't need to be the better fighter. He just needs Michailidis to fight like an idiot for like 30 seconds, run towards him once with the hands down, and he could get killed. So I think that this is a really scary fight for Michailidis, but I have a little bit of exposure to his money line, because I think plus 210 is a little absurd for somebody that has a UFC win, taking on somebody who, I'm not saying it's a high level UFC win, but frankly, it's arguable he won the round against Modestas Bukauskas until he fell out of the cage as well. So it's like the guy is like looked competitive in grappling exchanges in more than one UFC fight, and now we're going to say that he can't beat a kickboxer in a UFC fight. I'm just like not totally sold on that as a narrative. That being said, Pereira looks much bigger at the weigh-ins, and that for me is also a concern, because we want Michailidis to be able to get him to the ground here. And I do think that Pereira's probably got decent enough hips because he's a big, strong guy who sits down onto his stuff. I don't think he's just going to get horsed around here. But I think if Michailidis can weigh on him a little bit, press him in the clinch against the fence, he can maybe tire him out a little bit and then succeed in the grappling. But yeah, I like your spot on the fight not to go to decision. I'm looking right now on best fight odds, and minus 220 is the best available. So you crushed it from a line movement perspective.
Hey, man, I mentioned it on the DFS video. I'm going to say it again. Said it up like 5 times already, but check out that DFS video, because the main thing I said is you want to have one of these two fighters, all right? The win condition for Pereira, in my opinion, is a knockout, and that's going to score big. And I think it's not going to take much if he does land it. That left hook, as you mentioned, put out Adesanya, put out Jacoby, put out a lot better strikers than Andreas Michailidis. And then what's Michailidis' win condition? It's either a submission on the ground or it's top control to a decision win, right? Which will score big, takedowns every round. No matter what, you're getting a high scoring fighter. I think this is a fight you have to be like 90% owned in. I think it scores high either way. I'm going to be having a lot more Pereira though, because I do think that where it is a huge step up for Pereira, it's also a huge step up in having a striking affair with KB Bueller versus Alex Pereira as well. So I do think this fight ends one way or the other, but I will probably be having a lot of Pereira exposure on DraftKings as well. And with that, man, we're on the main card. Whew, what a main card. Let me just say it. This main card is absolutely stacked. We're starting it off with one of the fights I've been looking forward to for such a long time. Justin Gaethje, 22-3. Michael Chandler, 22-6. I've backed Michael Chandler both times out recently in the UFC. But this is a fight where I'm on the Gaethje train. I think this is a spot where a lot of Chandler's wins come on him being able to outmuscle, outpower, and beat people early on. And he's facing a guy in Gaethje who is a good wrestler himself and won't be put away in those first 2 rounds as easily as his other opponents. So I think this is one where Gaethje wears him down over the stretch and finishes him late. I have a bet locked in of Justin Gaethje inside the distance at minus 105. I'll probably add some Justin Gaethje round 3 in my opinion as well. I just think that his durability is too much. I think that his wrestling is up to par, And when it comes to the power, sure, you can give the edge to Chandler, but I think volume, boxing, pressure forward. I know they talk all the time about who's going to take the first backward step. I think it's going to be Chandler. I would not be surprised if Chandler shoots for a takedown at all. And even that being said, that's just going to drain his gas tank even more. So I think that Gaethje and everyone else telling you, last time Gaethje fought, everyone was picking him to upset Khabib. First of all, no. Second of all, if he's going to upset Khabib, what's stopping him from stuffing the takedown to Michael Chandler, right? So I'm on the Gaethje train. I'll be playing him on DraftKings. I think it's an electric fight. I don't mind the fight doesn't go to decision because I think Michael Chandler's win criteria is an early stoppage. So I don't know. What are your thoughts on this one?
I'm with you on the fight doesn't go to decision. Man, if I got to be honest with you, I have been on the wrong side of both Michael Chandler fights so far in the UFC. So maybe I'm the wrong guy to ask. And I also had a very ever so small ticket on Justin Gaethje against Khabib because I thought that the leg kicks were going to be a difference maker. And the leg kicks were a difference maker. I don't care what anybody says. From a spazzy back foot slip and slide performance, Justin Gaethje was still able to damn near kick the legs off Khabib. And my brain still wanders to what happens if that fight goes one more round and he gets off a couple more of the kicks, because you hear Khabib like get slapped with a kick and he basically was like, oh, F this. And he's like, I'm changing my sense of urgency. I'm taking this guy down right now. I'm passing it. I'm finishing. And Khabib is one of the very few people in the sport that can make a decision like that, choose to execute and do it. But I also don't think that everybody in the division is going to run through Justin Gaethje on the ground as a result of that. And Chandler, he's got this pattern of self-immolation, in my view. It didn't get there because, Dan Hooker got finished for the first time in his career. He got walked down and knocked out by Michael Chandler. It was very impressive. But I had a wager on Hooker there because I thought that Hooker would be able to deal with the pressure. I thought he would be able to deal with the power. And I thought that he would take over the fight as it went on. I thought he would land knees up the body. I didn't think he was going to get out-wrestled easily. And we didn't get to see that fight play out. So then I had a bet on Michael Chandler going against Charles Oliveira. I got plus 125, good number. I had plus 750 for Michael Chandler to win the fight in round one. But life goes on, right? It's like I felt, that was one of the most winnable matchups for him in the division. And he kind of made a lot of tactical errors in a one-round fight. Staying in the guard, mistake. Diving with somebody on your back like that could have been a catastrophic mistake. Lucky it wasn't. But I did tell people in the lead up to that fight, just like Anthony Pettis, the guy's got a phenomenal ability to turn in from somebody being on his back. But I think ultimately everybody's kind of got the same read on this fight. Everybody's thinking that this fight's really easy. Everybody's thinking that the fight's really clear. I heard Shaq from Best Fight Picks half the battle. Just want to credit those guys. But I heard him say this. It really stood out to me. He's like, everybody's got this idea that it's going to play out this simple way for Justin Gaethje. And we all got the same reasons. The leg kicks. Chandler's weak to the legs. Gaethje has tremendous hooks. We've seen Chandler finish with hooks. Gaethje's got a lot of power. I see all the logic and the evidence and the reasons. But we just saw that Michael Chandler against the champion was plus 125, bet down to like plus 110 at fight time, right? So Charles Oliveira closed like minus 130 against this guy. I don't think that Justin Gaethje opens as a favorite against Charles Oliveira. I don't believe that. So I think that's interesting in and of itself. I think that Michael Chandler, for all his faults, he is so dangerous, man. He's so dangerous for a round. Like he hits like an effing truck. Justin Gaethje's best attribute has never been that he doesn't get hit. His best attribute has never been that he doesn't get hurt. It's that he recovers. He comes back. He can stay in the fire. He's not afraid to get hit. But all those things are also potentially to his detriment here. And you had mentioned you think that it's going to be Chandler takes the first step back. I will definitively come down on the other side there. I do think it's going to be Gaethje that's taking the back foot in this fight. I think he's better than Chandler off the back foot. I think he's still able to land leg kicks and things like that off the back foot. But I think that it's not outside the realm that Chandler walks him down and nukes him in the very first round, dude. I think that is like definitely a live possibility, and people are discounting it a little bit because Gaethje's never been put away in the first round like that emphatically. But he's starting to tick up there in age just a clip. Both these guys, no spring chickens. Neither one of these guys can say they've gone without damage. Like both these guys get in car accidents every time they fight. So it's like we're saying that one of these guys is like a certainty. He's 70% to win the fight in a high-level lightweight matchup. That doesn't feel right, man. That doesn't feel right. And whereas Charles has the tools to make you pay on the feet and on the ground in a one-shot capacity, and I've heard people say he doesn't. He shut off Jared Gordon with the one uppercut as well. And Jared doesn't have the world's greatest chin, but, he's basically only been finished by big hitters. So it's like, I don't know. Charles kind of has like really powerful finishing tools in every position. I don't think that you could say the same about Gaethje, right? Like people have sometimes this idea of physical fatigue being what gets to people, and that's what happened to Michael Chandler. No, I think that that's a part of it, but it's also that he has this mental turmoil of this jiu-jitsu ace is on me. I got to move. I got to scramble. I got to do this. I got to cover. I got to defend. I'm panicking. That all takes a ton of energy from you. Michael Chandler is going to be the more confident grappler in this matchup. I have no doubt about that. I don't know if he'll be the more confident wrestler, but from a pure grappling perspective, Justin Gaethje doesn't seem like a grappler in any sense of the word, doesn't attempt submissions, doesn't defend them that well. Kind of some concerning signs in that Khabib fight in terms of his guard retention. There was none to speak of. Khabib's a good passer, but normally he's passing with punches. He kind of just big brother passed him with, pressure. Not a good look. He's a pro fighter, and he offered very little resistance, whereas Dustin Poirier got passed in a normal fashion, over the course of a grinding fight. He looked like a top 5 lightweight that was just outmatched. I didn't see that in terms of the skill level from Gaethje. I feel like Gaethje, when you give him the fight he wants, can look like $1 million. But I'm also just a little concerned that when you don't give him a fight on his terms, what is the fight going to look like? I've got more questions about that. And even the Edson Barbosa fight, there's kind of that weird eye poke. Edson's trying to back away, and then the fight gets stopped right there. It's like, that could have been an interesting challenge for Gaethje as well. He fought a pressure-based style there. He doesn't always fight with that pressure-based style, though, man. Sometimes he backs up a little bit. And, Tony Ferguson was able to drop him with an uppercut in a fight that was otherwise not very competitive. So it's like, even in a fight where he's winning, I think that the chin could always give out on him. I thought that he was, doing pretty well in the Poirier and the Alvarez fights at various points, and the leg kicks were adding up. But eventually he just can't take any more punches to the face. And, I think that his head's a big target, and he doesn't protect it that well. I think he's done a little bit better job of it recently. Like to see that trend continue. But I've just been a little concerned with the rhetoric from Gaethje as well about whether he's taking this fight as seriously as he needs to. I really think that, like, if he's not taking this fight serious, Chandler is super, super live to KO him in the first round. Chandler's a scary dude, and he's wound up like a freaking, toy. He's a drawstring, dude. Maybe he only goes for however long, 30 seconds, whatever it is. You wind up the monkey, and he dances for however long. But when Chandler's dancing, dude, he does a lot of damage fast. And frankly, it was tactical errors that prevented him from knocking out Charles Oliveira in the last fight. He easily could have been the UFC champion. And I wonder what the line would look like then.
Hey, I feel that too, and I'm seeing everyone in the chat say, "Oh, this has been hurt durability," and Gaethje being trash on the ground. I don't think Gaethje's that trash on the ground. I think that he didn't look good his last time out, but he's got some ground skills. But what we can agree on is I don't see this fight going the full 3 rounds. All right? Yes, and I will put Chandler way above Gaethje. I just still think that Gaethje does have some wrestling abilities. But yeah, I think this fight doesn't go to decision. I think it's going to be an absolute banger. My big reason, like I mentioned, my reason for the Gaethje inside the distance. The reason I locked it in so early was just because I thought line movement would change more than it does. I still beat it slightly on my book, but it's not changed as much as I want to. Go ahead.
The only other thing I would add, just super brief, was that I do have one untracked ticket on Justin Gaethje, small, like it's like less than a half unit at -175, because I kind of thought that the line was going to come in a little bit. No. The line exploded out, so I was like, "That's it. I'm not adding anything to this. I'll keep it very small." And yeah, I think if anything, I would play the fight doesn't go, or I would look at, I'm honestly going to just take a peek and see what the price is. But Chandler KO1 is definitely a bet I will consider. Chandler wins in round 1 +650, and Chandler KO1
I think it's
plus 900. Plus 900 you can get on that. Gonna be honest, I might have to play that line. Plus 900. Don't know about that.
Hey, man, I feel you. I don't mind that one either, honestly. But, yep, I see. Not going the distance. That's what we got.
You got to own one of these guys in DraftKings, too. Got to own one of these guys. Gaethje's price isn't outrageous for a guy who's expected to finish. And, on the other side, if you need an underdog with finishing potential, with a high scoring potential, Michael Chandler, I think, is a pretty obvious spot there.
All right, man. I love it. And, hey, I completely agree, too. But let's move right along to an absolute banger. Again, I'd like to say this main card is absolutely hype. Shane Burgos 13-3 versus Billy Q 16-3. And let me just say, big thing about this fight is Billy Q's coming back. Sorry, not Billy Q. Last time Burgos fought, he had a very, very, very scary knockout against him. I'm gonna keep it short. I think Burgos is the better fighter. I like that. What does that say?
It says Section 9, baby. Pride of Section 9, Shane Burgos. Let's go. Monroe, New York, stand up.
Well, hey, I'll tell you for a fact. I think that Burgos is the better fighter. And when it comes to levels, I do think he is built to win this fight. I think he's steps above in this striking. I do think that no matter how bad that knockout was, they're both very durable guys. I think this is going to be a really entertaining matchup. And if the thing is, if Billy Q wants to, I think that he might have the ground advantage if he does want to get it there. The problem I have is I don't think he's going to let Burgos is going to let him get it there. Sorry. I think that Burgos is going to stop those takedowns if they do come. And I think Burgos pieces them up on the feet. Billy Q's been hittable. They've both been very, very hittable. I just think that when it comes to experience, skills, technicality, I'm going to give it to Shane Burgos, and I think he wins this fight. But again, another fight that I really, really want to target on DraftKings.
All right, this is a fight I'm going to separate into two portions, right? So I'm going to start with the fan portion. The fan portion says, F everything else that Liam says. Shane Burgos, the man. He's a massive featherweight. Go look at the guy on the scale. He's effing enormous. He does it the right way, makes the weight, eats the right way, trains the right way, works really damn hard. Tiger Schulman's, Believe Elite athletic training. Shout out Monroe, New York again. He really puts in the work. This is a guy well-known, well-respected in the community. And everybody here is rooting for him. Hell of a, his brother, up-and-coming amateur as well. Studs, right? Whole family absolutely killing it. Training with the likes of Lyman Good, RBY, Julio Arce, very talented fighters. Mike Trezano. So trains with a good stable of guys, always rooting for those guys. Now I'm going to kick it to the betting perspective. And I like Shane a lot, but he gets hit too much. He gets hit too much for my liking, guys. He really does. And I think that, it's one thing to get dropped by Edson Barboza. It's one thing to get dropped by, Josh Emmett, right? It's one thing to get dropped by those guys. It's a different thing when you're getting dropped by Kurt Holleba, right? And the Kurt Holleba fight was earlier. So the problem for me is that Cater dropped him. Holleba dropped him. Barboza dropped him. Emmett dropped him. We're starting to get a pattern, right? A theme, which is that in a lot of these fights, Burgos has taken a little bit more damage than he should. right? When he's winning, when he's losing, every time, right? And it's starting to get a little concerning for me. Last knockout, horrifying imagery, right? And that was not that long ago. I want to say can't have been more than 7 months ago, right? 5, 6, 7 months ago, something like this, right? So that's a concern for me, coming back pretty quickly off that. Now, I listened to Shane's interviews. He said that he spoke with doctors. He said that there was nothing wrong with the brain. He said that there was not even a concussion after that fight. It was a weird anomaly. He's not sure what happened, but he felt fine. He had no symptoms. For me, it's his body starting to shut down under these periods of extended duress. And he puts his body in tremendous duress. Like he allows a lot of these shots to come through. He carries his hands very low. He baits people by putting his head and his chin on a silver platter. And that only can hold up for so long. And say what you will about Billy Q, right? He's not going to hit with this tremendous power, but he's going to throw, and he's not going to stop throwing. Like, the guy is very active. He throws a tremendous amount of volume, and he's actually recorded 5 third-round stoppages in his career. I believe he's got 16 wins, 12 by finish, 5 were in the third round. The guy is a cardio machine, right? And so Shane Burgos, you look at his fighting style, and again, I've watched every Shane Burgos fight more than once because I really like the guy, and he's a local guy, and I'm rooting for him huge. But what I started to notice as a pattern is, like, Shane tends to drag guys into deep water and break them mentally if he can. And if he can't, then he's just left out there trying to do the same game plan, which is dragging somebody into deep water. But the only way he can drag them into deep water is by standing out in the deep end of the pool. And you can't do that. You can't stand out there. You're underwater. And so what happens is a lot of these Shane Burgos fights start out with him underwater, and he's got to climb back out. I think that it's so hard to get momentum back against this guy, Billy Q. I think that it's so hard to dissuade this guy from coming forward. Gavin Tucker, he's small, but what he has that's really good is this technical, well-built game that's really clever, and he can stick you from weird angles, and he can mix in the takedowns and the wrestling, and he can out-MMA you if you let him over 15 minutes. That's what Gavin Tucker does. But I don't think that we're going to see that kind of fight here. I think we're going to see an absolute war. I think we're going to see an absolute dogfight, because that's how both these guys operate. And so the hardware on the Shane Burgos side says to me he should be the -125, -135, -140 favorite here, because he's the bigger guy. He's the stronger guy. He's got a reach advantage. He's a little bit more technical than Billy, but he's not going to be able to do what he normally does, which is drag someone into deep water. I think this is going to be a fight where both guys are out in deep water, in close fights, in close rounds, where they both land a tremendous amount of volume, and where, frankly, I think Billy has shown a little bit better durability. And that for me is the ultimate concern in this fight. So, I have a little bit of exposure to Billy Q round 3 at +2,000. I have some exposure to Billy Q wins by TKO in round 2 or 3 at +1,400. And I may make it to the window on Billy Q round 3 or decision +300. I might make it to the window on Billy Q money line at +167. And guys, I say that all with a heavy heart, because I'm rooting for Shane Burgos big as a fan. Pride of Section 9, baby. That's simple. Shane Burgos is my pick and my rooting interest. But I got to be honest with you guys, when I'm looking from a betting perspective, Shane Burgos as this wide of a favorite does not make sense to me in this fight. I know it's a little bit of a step down in competition, but I think that this is a time when Billy's taking an appropriate step up and Shane's taking an appropriate step down. That to me seems like an equal levels fight. And couple that in with the durability concerns, with the ugly visual from the last knockout, with the fact that Kurt Hollabun, not a power puncher, is dropping and hurting Shane Burgos, and with the fact that Shane Burgos, who normally has a sneaky grappling upside that he chooses not to use, he may in fact be at a grappling disadvantage against Billy Q. And I think that that for me is an interesting question here. We don't often get to see him engage in those realms. I think the better wrestler is Burgos, and he trains with phenomenal wrestlers. Roman Bravo Young and those guys come in to train. Like he gets in with good, solid college level wrestlers from the US. And I'm sure he's hanging up well in those rooms as well. But I think overall, Shane gives his back. Shane turns his back to people pretty often to try and fight grips. He's a big, strong guy, so he's hard to control. And most guys don't want to hold that body waist cinch. And I think that Billy Q is the exact kind of guy who will hold on to that, try and sink the hook in, try and take you down. And he's pretty slick on the ground, man. I don't like it. I don't like this fight for Shane. I would have preferred a fight against a grappler, somebody that's not going to be hitting him with a ton of volume. I would have preferred a fight where Shane was the guy who had the grappling upside in a clear way and he could bail himself out. I don't like this fight for Shane as a fan and a supporter.
Hey, well, great breakdown. I'm going to let everyone sit with that breakdown because I don't got anything better, I'll tell you that. The way I see this one is it's going to be a banger. Like you said, these are both guys who are known for durability and volume, right? It gives me, I'm not going to, no, that's a lie. It does not give me Josh Emmett versus Burgos vibes, but it gives me a type of fight that goes all 3 rounds. That is a great fight that we're going to remember for the ages. It's just, I don't know where I stand. I think it's going to be a volume fight, another one of those fights that I really want to target. I just don't know what side I want to be on. You said it all. You said all the worries that are there. A big thing, too, is that knockout that's coming off of, like you said, that durability. I don't know. I know that Billy Q gets better as fights goes on, and if you look at all of Burgos' losses, they are all 3rd rounds. So I'm going to stay out of it. I will be playing both sides on DraftKings. I think that it's going to be an all-out war. I still have that image, though, of him going down. But the big thing I have is level of competition. I think that Burgos has fought the better guys, and I think he does have the better skills here. So I'm going to pick him to win. But I think it's to be a close, long, drawn-out decision win.
He was just having competitive striking exchanges with Charles Rosa and with Kurt Holloway. And that for me is just, I think he's too willing to exchange with everybody he fights. And you can do that for a while and at the lower end of the division. And I think that you give Shane Burgos, a guy who's just signed to the organization, who's a bottom 50 guy, and he's going to dispatch of them accordingly. But I think if you give him one of these guys who's seasoned, tested, Billy Q, he's making improvements fight over fight. I won't take no for an answer on that. I thought the Mowgli Benitez fight was a clear spot for Mowgli, and Billy Q came out and shut me the F up. And made me reevaluate where he's at. I thought the Gavin Tucker fight put him on one level in my expectations, and the Mowgli Benitez fight reset that big time. And I think that he's not, destined for championship fights or something, but I do think he presents Shane in particular very tough stylistic challenges, because a lot of the areas where Shane can normally press an advantage is where Billy would try and press an advantage as well.
Hey, well, I completely agree. I'm going to leave it at that. I think it's a spot where you want to target this one because it's going to go at least 12 minutes, in my opinion. I don't know. Maybe it's just level of competition. Again, I have no bets on this one, so I'm going to stay out of it. But I am going to lean towards more Burgos roster or ownership on DraftKings. And at that, we have 3 fights left. And speaking of nasty knockouts, Frankie Edgar is coming back off of that flying knee. Still, maybe my knockout of the year, because that was insane. I don't think it's talked about enough how good that sand hangout was. He's facing Chito Vera, a guy who I've had his ups and downs betting with him and against him. But this is a good fight, in my opinion. 24-9-1 Frankie Edgar versus 19-7-1 Marlon Vera. This is the last fight before the 2 fight for the straps. I'm going to keep this one short. I think that I would not be betting this fight because I think that Edgar's a better fighter, but he's getting old. His chin's been tested recently. I don't want to see that happen again. I think that if Edgar wanted to, he could wrestle him. He has the wrestling advantage, and I think he could make it a very boring decision. I see a lot of people betting Edgar decision. That won't be me because I do think that Chito Vera is still to this day, he's had a lot of fights, but I think he's still growing as a fighter. I think he's still getting better. And I think that he's still dangerous to finish Edgar here, but I think that Edgar has a lot of value at the money line. No bet for me, though. I think that out of all the exciting fights and the must-have DraftKings ownership fights, this isn't one, in my opinion. But I'm excited to hear your thoughts on it, man. What are your thoughts? You are muted, mi amigo.
Unfortunado. Lo siento. Now back to the regularly scheduled programming, folks. I think that this is a really interesting spot. I think that Chito Vera, he's cost me some paper before. I'm just going to be plain simple and honest about that. And so I'll give him his credit there. I think that overall, Chito Vera, talented guy, good skills, poor process overall. And I think that that's what costs him some fights that he otherwise could win. I think that his ground game is a little suspect, a little liable. He spends too much time on his back, even as recently as the Davy Grant fight. So for me, there's some real clear red flags with backing somebody like Chito Vera, which is that he can concede rounds by giving up back control, by giving up takedowns, by staying in guard. But it's hard to bet against the guy at times because he can eke out a finish late in the fight. He can, keep a fight really close optically by doing some damage, by keeping you at bay with kicks, by really doing like one punctuated or two punctuated exchanges in the clinch that bloody you up and make a big difference. So I think that, Chito's definitely got some interesting tools. And there's a lot of matchups where I like Chito in the UFC. And I think that Chito is like, a pretty fun fighter, broadly speaking. But I think he can't afford to give away first rounds against Frankie Edgar because Frankie Edgar will then take the momentum of a fight and start trying to run with it. And I think on top of that, we talked about people with poor footwork before who are standing there to be hit. And Frankie Edgar is traditionally not that. He's normally in or out and moving and ducking and moving laterally. And a lot of it is like pre-programmed. Like it's not like he's like thinking through it on the fly. He like does a bunch of preset movements and things along that line. But I think broadly he does really well at that and he avoids a ton of damage. Granted, he's been made to pay now by like some of the better counter strikers in his divisions, respectively. Chan Sung Jung makes him pay with an early counter shot like he's done to many guys on short notice, by the way, when Frankie steps up after agreeing to take a fight at 135. So they're like 135, 145. Okay, here you go. Sign this contract. You're in there. And Frankie didn't look like himself. He didn't look ready to go. He gets starched there. He got starched by Ortega. That one was just a clean knockout. Ortega hit him with a really nice elbow. He hit him with the uppercut. Really long guy, massive featherweight, got some stopping power. Okay, I'll take that one too. And the Corey Sandhagen one, it's like Corey is maybe the most athletic and accurate flying kneer in the UFC today. He jumps up high. He puts it on people's face. He's done it to more than two guys. It's like, yeah, Corey can just flying knee people. He's pretty dang good at it. And Frankie was there to be hit because he was pressuring. Corey set the trap for him, exploded through, and then walked out. It was like beautiful, picturesque work by Corey. Okay. Do I expect Marlon to do any of those things? I don't. I don't expect Marlon to jump on Frankie early. I think it'd be really smart if he does, but I don't expect it. I expect Chito to work his way into this fight. I expect the fight to get really close and dicey by round 3, but I locked in a Frankie Edgar moneyline play a while back at plus 137, I think it was, because I didn't expect that line to stick around. Then we saw Frankie get up to plus 150 and all these numbers, and I was, eagerly looking, thinking about adding. I was like, let's wait and see how far this thing goes. Now there's been some sharp buyback. Now you're seeing Frankie Edgar's money line start to come back down in price, and I'm on Frankie Edgar to win this fight by decision at plus 260. I think that that's a good bet. Whether it wins or loses, Frankie Edgar is probably not knocking out Chito Vera. I'd be a little surprised if Frankie submits Chito, but not stunned altogether, because I do think y'all must have forgot Frankie Edgar is a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. He's a talented wrestler. When he implements that game plan, And when he's not fighting Pedro Munoz, for Christ's sakes, it's like the guy has the scariest division, or excuse me, the scariest guillotine in the division. Of course, Frankie's not out there pressure wrestling him from start to finish, but I do think that Frankie still has some wrestling in his back pocket. I think he's going to need to use it here. I think that if he keeps himself all the way in or all the way out, he can also box up Chito Vera. I know people might disagree with that, but I think that if Frankie is touching with the hands, mixing up his levels to the body, and also shooting takedowns and finding top control opportunities, I think that he can eke out a decision here despite his age. I think this is a winnable matchup for Frankie, and I love Frankie Edgar. And I also think that talking about fights in New York, guys that could grease a decision here based on crowd and judging optics, I think Frankie Edgar is chief among them. One more for the boys. Let's get Frankie Edgar across the line.
There you go. I agree with everything you said there too. This is a spot where I think I'm going to sit back and enjoy it. No bet from me at all. Like I said earlier, not really a DraftKings target for me either. I think Edgar probably it was definitely the value side in terms of betting. But again, Vera has proved me wrong multiple times. Ooh, sorry about that. I should probably mute that. Yeah, and we're just moving right along because these last two ones are absolute barn burners, and I don't want to hold you here too much longer because I appreciate you for giving me your time, but I know you're a busy, busy man. So we got two belts on the line here, and this one hurts me to say it because we have my girl, probably my favorite female fighter, Rose Namajunas versus Weili Zhang, 21-2. Rose is 10-4. I have a bet on Zaylee. I do. And that hurts me to say. It's like you never want to bet against your favorite people because you want them to succeed. But I just think that knockout she got, it was perfectly placed. It doesn't happen all the time. I think that was where it's definitely not a fluke. It was perfect. But if that fight gets prolonged, we don't know where it goes. We haven't seen everything. And when you have someone who is coming in as much as minus 200 the last time out, it is unfair for her to be the underdog. That being said, I did bet on Weili when she was plus 110, not when she is now. I think that my bet was strictly because she was the underdog. Just because I think that she's hungry for it than ever. She thinks that she is mad at herself, and I think she goes out there and she implements a different game plan than she would before. Training at fight ready, looks yoked. Looks like she's going to be in good form too. The way I see it is it's a win-win here. Either my girl Rose wins or I make some money. And I think that's going to be super, super close. I don't see that knockout happening again. If anything, I would bet the over. I think this one goes all 5 rounds. I think it's going to be an absolutely insane fight. And it's just tough. I know how good Rose is on the feet, but you always see that regression when you're the champ. She doesn't have that same motivation to get the belt. And you have Weili, who's on the other side, who does want that belt. There's so many things going on here that I shouldn't see Weili at plus 110. And that was my logic. Is I saw that plus 110 and I snagged it up for 1 unit. I think she's going to go out there, and where I love Rose, it's going to be a tough fight for her. And I was on Rose last time as the underdog. I cashed on her and was one of my most profitable DraftKings night because I had Rose in almost every lineup. But that was me banking on her winning a decision. And whereas I do see that now, I think that both fighters score well. I think it does go longer. It's one of these stackable fights because I do think it goes all 5. And now I'm just rambling on. But all for this to say that my bet's on Weili, but I am cheering for Rose, and I think it's going to be a really razor split decision. It's just when you gave me those plus 110 odds, I had to jump on it. What are your thoughts on this one?
I will try and keep this one a little short and sweet, but here's what I'll say. I think that I am obligated to play Weili in this fight because I bet her as a minus 200 favorite last time. And now I get plus 108. I played that line early on. I'm clicking over to best fight odds right now. The best price on Weili is minus 115. So I only put down a half unit at plus 108. It's possible I will put down another half unit or a full unit at this minus 115 tag. But I'm really going to try and wait it out, see if late money comes back, public money comes back on Rose. I kind of expect it to because the logic will be Rose finished her the first time. She's going to finish her again. And that's very possible. I just don't think that it's any more possible than it was the first time. And, the first time that was partially baked into the line. I think that, my only concern about this bet is that going back on tape, Weili is very hittable. And so she's going to get hit again in this fight. That's just like a given. My question is, can she wait? Can she draw out the fight a little bit? Can she get Rose working first? If she can get her in the clinch, if she can press her with some knees, some elbows in the clinch, if she can work her against the fence, if she can shoot some takedowns and try and get some control time, even if she can't, if she can get some takedowns and force Rose to get back to her feet, I think that's what she needs to do to take a little bit of sting off the punches. You know, I thought last time she had the right idea, which was to kick the leg. I think it was too many inside kicks. Got to mix it up. Got to go inside kicks. Got to go outside kicks. Got to go to the body as well. It's too much to the legs. It got a little too predictable. I'd also like to see her, instead of everything coming off of the, the low line leg kick, let's get back to that side kick to the body that she used to use a lot more, because that off balances people and it keeps them at a far distance and it makes them a little reticent about coming back into range. So I think that a lot of things that Weili could do in this fight to improve on her last performance. I think for Rose, that's kind of as good as it's going to get. Maybe she goes out there and does it again. I don't think that's a tremendously likely outcome. So I think that Rose is going to have to fight and earn this. And I think that, at a pick'em price, I could see why you'd line up with either one of these fighters, to be truthful, because now Rose can knock this girl out. She can hurt her and finish her. Weili had shown pretty good recoverability prior to that. But I also think her supplement game just went through the roof. Her training situations just got improved. I don't know. I just think it's a little hard to back Rose now at this price when I didn't back her at the plus 160 line last time. So that's why for me, I'm right now riding with half a unit on Weili at plus 108.
Well, pains me to say it, but I'm with you. See Frank in the chat saying it's not going the distance. I can definitely see that. I do think that what happened the first time isn't out of the realm of possibilities. What I'm saying is the line doesn't justify it, in my opinion. I think that the line should be a bit more favored towards Weili. I think it is regressing that way now. I know that come fight night, it will change because, again, Madison Square Garden, everyone loves Rose, me included, but it's not one of those fights where I think that Weili should be the underdog as she was. Yes, sir.
There's also Zhang 4-5 decision at plus 185. Just saying. FanDuel Sportsbook. If you like Weili to take over the fight going late, but you don't want to get that exposure now that she's hit chalk odds, that's some way that you could look to target it. My only concern there would be I'd add that round 3 as well. I think that if Rose does start to fall apart in this fight, it could easily be in that 3rd round. We've seen that in the past in the Andrade fight. In particular, I thought that was a 10-8. I thought that fight was a draw. And I thought that, if that fight had gone another minute and a half, 2 minutes, it could have been very possible that Andrade stops her in that spot again. So I think that Weili's physicality didn't have a chance to, play into the fight last time. I think this time it's going to have a chance to play in. So whether she wins or loses, I think that Weili is probably the better bet.
And yeah, MBA asked the question, you think that Weili took more damage than Rose did Andrade? I think so. I think that Joanna, that fight was one for the ages. I've watched it multiple times. I love that one. But she took a lot of damage, and whereas Rose threw a lot of punches too, I don't think what was that, breaking records for female fights too? That fight was a war. However, she's had the time to recover. Maybe it impacted her last time out, but that fight was 9 months ago, her last fight against Rose. So I think that the chin will hold up this time. Again, though, if it doesn't, there you go. I love Rose, but my money will be on Weili this weekend. All right, main event time, my friend. This is one we've been waiting for. Uten versus Covington 2. And I'm going to come off the rip by saying not the biggest fan of either of these guys, but they are world-class athletes. And hey, I feel you, man. They're absolute warriors. They're great fighters, and they have a lot of skills here. This is one where I think it's been an absolute war. The first fight was a lot closer than people imagined. However, I do think that Usman's the better fighter. I think if I had to pick one, my highest ownership will be in Usman. I think he put up a lot of points last time and he'll do it again. I think he's the better fighter. When it comes to betting, I have a bet on Colby Covington at plus 260. The reason is their first fight was just way closer than that line entails. Right? It's the same thing. You would expect the same thing, right? You expect that because Covington looked so good that time out, that they'd do the same thing that Rose and Whaley fight did. The line would come closer, right? Maybe even close at all. But it's staying almost the exact same. And Covington, whereas he did lose, and convincingly, it was closer than the line entails. I think that if they fought again, if he didn't break his jaw, things happened differently. He lives up to that price tag. So it is purely a value bet on my side. I think that Kamaru Usman wins. I have him in all my DraftKings lineups, or a lot of them right now currently. But I think that having Colby Covington at that price tag is a bit outrageous because he put up 57 DraftKings points in a loss. He was putting out volume, and now it looks like he's hungry for it too, and that's all without shooting takedowns. I mean, both these guys have phenomenal wrestling, so I don't factor the takedowns in the equation. But it looks like you have the opportunity for Covington to live up to that price tag. I think that plus 260 is very, very wide, despite how much I think Usman is a great fighter. It's just crazy because I think that Covington is one of the only guys to have paths to victory against Usman with that volume, keeping up with the pace and the wrestling opportunities too. And it's just so many thoughts going on in my head right now. I'm so excited for this one. So let me hear what you got to say, and then maybe I can put them all together after. But on face value, I think the line is way too wide. I think Usman wins the fight, but I have a bet on Colby Covington due to value.
I find myself in the same position that you're in. I think that Kamaru Usman is the better fighter overall. You know, if you look at his body of work, if you look at his UFC resume, you know, he's put together a better career. But Colby Covington is like 1A, 1B with him in a lot of ways. You know, the differences being Colby's been taken down. Kamaru has not been taken down. Colby has been defeated in the UFC. Kamaru has not been defeated in the UFC. Colby has been finished via submission in the UFC. And again, that's something that has not happened. But, you know, none of that matters. It's just going to be a fight. You know, it's just going to be a fight between two guys. And the two guys that are in this fight, you know, they both have had, what is it, almost a year and a half, 2 years to process what happened in the last fight. Plenty of time. They've both left their original gym. They've gone to new places. So we haven't gotten to see a lot of tape on Colby Covington, right? Colby's been working in silence. Colby's been working, you know, in silence by his standards, right? It's like Colby's been working in obscurity, a gym that is like focused on what Colby's got going on right now. So MMA Masters, he's training with a bunch of solid welterweights. I think that Colby is going to be prepared for the fight. I think that he's all in, all chips in, invested a lot in getting this opportunity. And this is like his make or break fight for his fighting career. So I'm sure he's pulled out all the stops. He looked tremendous physically on the scale. You know, Kamaru, I was a little bit weirded out seeing the pictures of him and Justin Gaethje. They look like they're the same size. Am I crazy? Am I an insane person? I was seeing pictures of them standing next to each other going, who's fighting at 170 tomorrow? You know, I think that Kamaru is obviously big and strong. I don't think he has the thickest legs. You know, obviously he's got a big ass, but I'm talking about calves. I think that they're a little bit vulnerable and nobody's really been able to test him there. I think that MMA Masters is a good kicking gym. Yeah, shout out to Mbe. I agree. You know, I think that Kamaru has old man knees, you know, and I could say that I'm a wrestler. I have old man knees too. You know, it's just like we beat up our knees. We take a little bit of a beating there. He's got a whole other career in combat prior to this. He's been ultra effective, but I think that what was so interesting about Kamaru when he was coming up is that there was no margin for error. Like he was not going to lose the fight. Go back and watch the Tyron Woodley fight. Guys, he was not going to lose the fight. They couldn't rob him. No judge could screw him over. There's nothing you could do. He absolutely won the fight. He left no doubt. And there has not been one fight since then that's been as clear as that Kamaru fight against Tyron Woodley. You know, even the Masvidal fight, Masvidal is able to like grease the first round on 2 judges' scorecards, right? So like able to work his way in there. Then Kamaru just presses him into the fence. Masvidal content to do nothing, right? So weird decision fight there. Then, he outstrikes Masvidal, who he's got a pretty significant youth advantage on, who Masvidal, for all of the wins he was able to put together and all the fun he was able to have on the journey, he was getting rocked along the way by the Darren Tills of the world. It's not like he was getting through all of his fights unscathed. So I think that there were some signs on the wall that Masvidal's chin might be going. And he's getting towards that age where people's durability starts to go. So, okay, he gets finished by Masvidal there, he finishes Masvidal there. He fights his teammate, Gilbert Burns. Gilbert Burns rocks him bad. Gilbert's a primary striker, primary grappler, rocks him bad. Kamaru, good recoverability, composes himself, gets back on track, ends up hurting him and putting him away. But we've also seen that Gilbert can kind of be hurt and put away. We've seen that Gilbert can get a little bit fragile down the stretch in fights where it's not going his way. And I say that with all due respect. Gilbert's an absolute savage and a tremendous fighter. But I feel like he was all in, hurt him bad, wanted to get him out of there, couldn't get him out of there, and mentally was defeated at that point. And that happens, right? So I think that Kamaru, he's feeling himself. He's on the Kamaru Usman juice right now. And he's like, I'm the best in the world. I could box Canelo. I'm this guy. I don't buy that shit at all. I think that Kamaru is a great fighter and a great champion, but I think he's had a couple favorable matchups where he was able to look really good and shine on the feet. And I think he's going to come back to this fight and stay on the feet. I think if Usman chooses to wrestle, the fight could look a little different. The fight could look a little bit more safe, a little more controlled. I think physically he might be the more imposing guy, but I think that there might be some truth to Colby's criticism that he doesn't wrestle me because he's afraid of getting tired. I think that is honest. I think that's part of the reason why Usman doesn't wrestle for all 25 minutes. He faced very little resistance against Tyron Woodley. He's like the king of no resistance. But I think that, this is going to be a fight where he meets tremendous resistance in all positions. Colby is a big pace fighter. And so I think that people who are saying that Colby can't win this fight are a little delusional, and they're talking themselves out of what they saw last time, because Colby landed clean flush head kicks. He landed clean flush combinations. Kamaru put himself in range to be hit many times. Kamaru digging to the body, essential to the win. I think he's going to do that early and often here. But I think that Colby, if he can keep this at kicking range, can keep it very competitive. When's the last time you saw a kicking performance from Kamaru Usman? He does have a longer reach here, so he's going to be able to try and get some punches in. And, he's got an effective 1-2. He's got a great jab. I just think that this is a fight that could get a little tricky. I think that Usman is he's a very talented, very skilled guy. I just think that he might be on the precipice of that durability collapsing. I feel like his body's held together by tape right now. And I do think one day that can't last. I think that's the reason he's stiff as a board, and his defensive reactions haven't been stellar for me. I have this vision that one day he's going to get hit on the chin and just fall as a statue. But I don't think Colby's necessarily this big hitter, but I do think it's not outside the realm that Colby chin checks this guy with a shin to the face. So I think I'm going to ultimately side Usman. I think Usman should be minus 185 in the spot. I think that's around what he closed the first time they fought. I think that now the market has overreacted to some recent performances from Usman. So I'm going to have to be on Colby here at plus 260. I think that there might be something interesting on Colby KO or decision. I'll look at what that price is. But I do think that Colby, I think everybody saying that Colby can't finish this fight are talking themselves out of what they saw last time, just a little bit. And probably because of personal biases. I say that also acknowledging that, Kamaru Usman, I bet against him with Gilbert Burns and looked a little foolish in that one. Granted, Gilbert hurt him, but, felt like Gilbert didn't really offer him anything in the grappling realm, which is what I was interested in seeing. So we'll have to wait and see if Colby is the guy to challenge Kamaru. I'm not sure who else would pose the next best threat. Unfortunately, my guy Vicente Luque missed weight like a dumbass as the backup fighter. I kind of thought that was just a foolish spot for him to take overall. It's like, Vellante, you're a massive 170. You're not going to get the fight in all likelihood. So why would you show up as the backup fighter? And if you are going to do it, then make the damn weight, for Christ's sake, so you don't lose the spot. Like, now he was the backup fighter and gets nothing for it. It's just like, what? I love Vellante, but that was frustrating. So I think overall, man, this is the fight at welterweight right now. And until Khamzat Chimaev has his say, I feel like these are probably the two best guys.
Well, fair play, man. I completely like that spot. And you cover the whole breakdown. I completely agree with what you have to say. DFS Whisper, my boy in the chat, couple hot takes. He thinks that he's going to have a sub for Mr. Usman. And I just checked for you, plus 1,300 for Kamaru Usman to sub. Personally, not the most likely outcome for me. But you never know. I mean, I think this is going to be an absolute war. It's going to be a great scrap, and I'm really excited to see it. In terms of a DraftKings perspective, I think it's a really high-scoring affair because you have two guys known for their volume, known for their endurance, known for their ability to mix things up, being well-rounded. I see a lot of points. Usman sitting at the price tag he is. I think he lives up to it. And then Colby Covington, great value because if he wins this fight, he's optimal for sure. He has output as it is, 57 points in a loss last time. They can do that again. This is a spot where I think Usman's the better fighter, but the line's too wide. So I have a bet on Covington. When it comes to the division, I think that a Covington win would be really entertaining. Usman's beaten everybody. He doesn't have to do it again. So, hey, you never know. I'm really looking forward to it. Like I said, bet on Covington right now at plus 260. Don't know if anything else is going to come from it. We'll have a lot of ownership on DraftKings. And with that, we are done the breakdown in an hour and 50 minutes. Wow, what a card. What a breakdown. I appreciate you for coming on. We're not done yet. Don't you guys worry. After this video is done, though, make sure you guys are checking out that DraftKings video because I got a lot of hot takes there. Help you guys build your slates. And you know guys where to find me on Twitter. But, Mr. Liam, two things I need from you. As always, those long shot parlays, you can hit them up now and make sure to let everybody know where to find you. Oh, you're muted again, mi amigo. We're going back to the Spanish. Muy bien.
Oh, brutality. Let me bring up, if you have one on hand, you could go ahead and drop it first. I am logging into my FanDuel currently to pull up the long shot that I put together. But I could also give one off the top of my head if you prefer.
No worries. Instead of doing that, I'll just go over the bets I have locked in right now. I actually have no Hail Marys yet. I was, living life. I haven't really locked in many of my bets, and I'm happy to have done this show with you because you've able to talk me with the legends, some of them. I know I'm going to lock in a few after this, but right now I have the 2 units on Ian Gary and Pereira and Michailidis. Fight doesn't go to decision. Parlay that together plus money. 2 units on that. I have a unit at Colby Covington plus 260. A unit at Weili Zhang at plus 110. I have a unit on Justin Gaethje to finish inside the distance at minus 110. And I will be adding something to do with Ade Osborne for sure. I know I had something there, but I think I withdrew it. Anything else? Let's look at this card. I know I had some. Oh, Edmond Shahbazian plus 120. Love that spot there. Might have a little sprinkle on some John Alon inside the distance at plus 900 because I'm feeling like throwing some money away. But yeah, I mean, we'll see. It's a good card. Make sure you guys check me on Twitter so you guys know when I'm posting my stuff because I will be adding more plays. But that's it for now. But I'm excited to hear your long shot parlays. You were pretty close the past couple of weeks, eh? All right, go for it, my guy. What do you got?
I threw together. Ode Osborne and Vergara ends by KO plus 140. Melsik Bagdasarian minus 290. I don't love the price, but I like the fighter. Gary and Williams does not go the distance, minus 290. Imavov, 8. And are we there? Sorry about that. And closing us out, if you can hear me again, was Justin Gaethje, Michael Chandler. Fight does not go the distance. The total odds on the parlay plus 1721. And I honestly feel pretty good about that. Cashing, like I like a lot of those spots. Pretty solid. Granted, the sketchiest ones in there are the Imavov spot and the Vergara and Osborne ends by KO. Those are the shortest lines in there, but those are some things that I liked from the card all bangled together. But I would also say if you guys have access to prop parlays, you could go Frankie Edgar decision, Ian Gary submission, and or inside the distance. I would look Melsik Bagdasaryan inside the distance as a potential play there. I would look at Imavov round 3 as a potential sprinkle. I would look at Billy Quarantillo round 3 potential sprinkle. And, sneaky play Billy Q round 3 or decision. I think that's also an interesting look at the plus 300 tag.
Well, in return for that, I will give you some prize pick. Guys, what is it? Code Liam, right? Code Liam on prize picks. He's giving you
promo code Liam. It's 100% deposit match up to $100.
Perfect. Thank you. There. I use that actually today. I'm getting started on my prize pick bets. The two that jump out to me on paper, first off, I like the over in the Ade Osborne fantasy score. The under in the Marlon Vera fantasy score, and the fight time. Who was it? I like the I can't find it anymore. Oh, the under in the fight time for Alex Pereira. So those are my prize pick spots for you guys. I know you love that. So yeah, that's gonna do it. Again, make sure you're checking out my Twitter at Gordo Gamers to figure out those plays. And yeah, let them know where they can find you, my man.
Absolutely. And the last thing I had is, I didn't come armed and prepared with a DraftKings lineup. Had to just scramble to get mine together. But this is what I got for you, folks. I got Zhang Wei Li. I got Ian Gary. I've got Billy Quarantillo. I got Bagdasaryan. I've got Ade Osborne. I've got Frankie, the answer, Edgar. And that leaves $0, 0 cents, baby. Let's get that optimal.
All right, perfect. Well, you know what? I'll message you after this, and I'll invite you to a friendly competition. You can join the tournament with my roommates and see if you kick their butts there too. But thank you as always for coming on the show, guys. I think we're at 7 weeks in a row of you coming on the channel here. I appreciate it more than ever. You've been an absolute stud, and I'm gonna miss doing a Tender series with you. But we can keep doing this as long as you want to keep coming on the show. But that's gonna do it for us. Make sure to check out at LiamPicksFights in the description down below, or on Twitter, Instagram. Where else are you on? You got your bet MMA. You got it.
Yeah, betmma.tips. But I don't really, sell my picks. I mostly put up paid picks just on there, so that way people who are getting my premium product at scoresandodds.com on their expert pick section, I write preview articles for Roto Grinders. That's what I'm doing as soon as I finish up jiu-jitsu practice tonight. So yeah, just staying after it. You know me, always back to work.
Hey, well, that makes it under 2 hours. Again, thank you for coming on the show. Guys, finally timed, and go check out that DFS video. Make sure you leave a like on that one as well. I appreciate all of you guys for hanging out with us. And yeah, let's make some money, guys. Cheers. Enjoy the fights tomorrow.